The Sinstacker Chronicles by Artesia nor the preamble. By the time that the 1960s rolled around, the racing dynasty founded by Enzo Anselmo Giuseppe Maria Ferrari could tell that racing was going through a major technological evolution, as his sleek and streaming works of art were in the midst of change from front to mid-engine, all by design. In a designed rocket, the driven man savored victory for the last time at the fabled Le Mans course in his one of 32 masterpieces, both 250p prototype mid-engine racers. Sometimes we look for competition and change in our own backyard, and this legendary racer might have had a correct premonition about engine placement, but the competitive storm brewing thousands of miles away was harder for him to scope and comprehend. Benny Howard, the famed aviator and designer of racing airplanes, didn't think much of the Shelby Daytona Cobra coupe, and he told Pete Brock, the car designer, that his ideas were impractical. Shelby returned from his lunch with Howard and told his engineer that he better be sure of his calculations, that Howard better be wrong, in a Texas drawled voice as only Shelby relay. During the sixth decade of the 20th century, Ferrari and his American counterpart fought furiously for dominance in the European world of GT racing, specifically the FIA World Manufacturers' Championship GT class. Shelby wanted to be king, and Ferrari was appalled at the notion that this unwashed foreigner could achieve this lofty goal. The iconic blue and white Cobra coupe version, featuring a specifically built Ford 289 cubic inch V8 that breathed fire on the track, was the weapon of choice as it became the only American car to beat a Ferrari in World Championship racing in Europe up to that moment in time. The fourth of the 6 handmade race cars ever produced was auctioned off for the incredible price tag of $7.2 million in 2009, the highest price paid for an American car at public auction. All 6 of the original cars that are in existence today have amazing pedigrees, fully documented histories related to each, but a persistent rumor of a 7th existing, the classic barn find if there ever was one, was hidden somewhere in Southern California, and all who worshipped at the altar of all things chrome, steel, and fiberglass held hope that they would find it. That rumor, as impractical as it was, would swirl to all corners of the classic car auction marketplace and tantalize the few who had domain influence there, sifting like sand between the cracks of commerce to everyone below. Chapter 1. The cowboy Oliver Goody saw the memo posted in the office when he arrived for his shift. As a result of the school shooting in Connecticut the previous week, an all-points bulletin demanding that every available federal law enforcement personnel to increase patrols and to drop the hammer on anyone using a gun in a legal or illegal manner. The message undertone that Goody took was to hassle everyone, even the innocent. All legal authority, aside from campfire and picnic-related offenses, had eluded him to this point in his career as he existed on the lower end of the law enforcement food chain, taunted even by his fellow officers as they watched him seethe as they made Barney Fife references in passing. He would do this job for nothing if he could really lay down the law on those who deserved it. Ollie was a nickname used by acquaintances and fellow workers, all of whom knew that he hated it, so they used it quite a bit. Those around him knew something was wrong with this pseudo-cop as they recognized his diminished height and equally misshaped physical profile that contained a darkened heart that openly lacked compassion for others. Wanting to be the real deal, embracing the power that he thought should come with it, this banty rooster of a glorified lawman was ready for business. While he had his own love affair with firearms, imagining the potential shootout with hardened criminals, he was happy to have been given the implied order to shut down the smarmy target shooters who oozed into the creek area every weekend and never once showed him the respect he felt was deserved as they would openly defy his authority, asking loudly if he carried his one bullet in his shirt pocket, referring to him as Barney. As he passed slowly, he drove with purpose down the road that split the 2 canyon walls in federal land reserve, laced between BLM and National Parks land in an area known as Lytle Creek in Southern California. While he wasn't a fan of the current president, he knew the man's feeling regarding the Second Amendment and the opportunity to use the tales of wounded children to advance his political agenda. Goody saw that his ultimate boss didn't want to miss this opportunity to strike a blow against guns, and those who owned them. In his fantasy, he imagined some great honor bestowed upon him in a future Rose Garden event. Going a step further, he clearly sorted all those in his life that would not be invited for sure. Lytle Creek had been an unofficial shooting area for local gun people in San Bernardino County for over 50 years, and the folks who went there to shoot had pride in how their impromptu ranges were established. Making sure that gun safety rules were observed on the firing line, spent shells and trash cleaned up and hauled away with the visitors. Recreational shooting gave the otherwise crowded urban population a release and a link to their Western historical past. On this particular sunny day, Shane Lawrence had just completed 2 hours of impromptu range duty as he cleared each weapon and placed them in their cases. His motley crew of shooters were busy picking up the spent brass and trash, placing them in the field trash bag. The group of kids were all gun novices and had enjoyed hours of shooting a variety of pistols and shotguns. They were given the safety speech regarding the keeping of the weapons downrange, positioning their hands and feet properly, and additional instruction on how to operate a peep sight, calculating windage and elevation. In a world of make-believe video games and movies, these youngsters found it satisfying and sobering to shoot a real-life fire stick. It was at this precise and satisfying moment the lawman imposed the law with full and pent-up Goody fury. "Drop your guns now." The lumpy lawman shouted in a shrill voice as he transferred the reality of a father teaching youngsters how to be responsible with weapons into desperados who were willing to fulfill his combative dream scenarios. Shane, a combat veteran who served in the Marines while in the worst of the war in Iraq, took umbrage with this squat person pointing an apparently locked and loaded heavy weapon at him, while his son and his friends sat terrified by the unfolding event before them. "Drop your weapon, officer. You are making a mistake threatening me with a loaded gun." Maintaining a measured but forceful calm voice towards his accuser, the endangered father checked his emotions and firmly continued to point out what Goody was doing wrong. "You are supposed to talk to me, determine that I am not armed, which I am not, also ascertain that." Lawrence spoke with disgust layered in his voice. In a flash, Goody had his rifle rattled downward off of the window ledge of his green Federal Parks Department patrol car, and in an instant felt his fingers slip and was horrified to see the round instantaneously reach out and strike one of the frightened teenagers in the shoulder, causing blood to soak his shirt as he writhed on the ground in pain. The startled father jumped to attend to the wounded child, and as the rest of the kids and Goody stood with their mouths open, unable to move. In a matter of seconds, the immobile and errant cop watched his career go down the tube in an instant of impropriety. The following 6 months was a toxic slide from self-perceived respectability to shame. From the judge scolding him regarding his failure to follow the universal guidelines for a show of force, including the officer's presence and demeanor, verbal control variations from persuasion to heavy control and command, physical control, etc., and then deadly force. Goody knew them all, and his face glazing over from the constant berating he was receiving from the judge and the piss and government lawyer, along with the hateful and stern looks from the wounded child and the accusing family, just made him weary. The federal judge positioned on an elevated plateau, placed with purpose above the disgraced former lawman, theatrically peering down with disgust on the man who dared to show the lack of proper attention in his solemn courtroom. Do you have even a simple grasp of how you have affected your community, your government, and certainly the life of the young person that you shot, Mr. Goody? The accused man mentally cried out from the inside, blaming his upbringing, his soon-to-be ex-wife, her family, his supervisors that had abandoned him, and of course the president, who he was trying to please by fulfilling his vague order. In spite of the internal fountain of justification, the sound of words, "Yes, Your Honor," dribbled like saliva from the mouth of a child learning how to spit for the first time. The judge's disdain for the disgraced man before him could not get more severe as the trial moved on to the preconceived conclusion of criminal guilt. Any esteem that existed in the previously pompous ex-lawman was now bitterroot and lost. Shackled at the ankles and hands, the voiced sentence of 7 years in federal custody ringing in his ears, the newly convicted felon almost fell several times being led from the courtroom. His attorney had promised him a much lighter sentence with parole, but now replaced with this reality, he knew he would have to do 3 minimum, maybe 4 years, with 3 or 4 years of sucking up to a probation officer on a monthly basis. No, the world was taking its sweet time to pour out its wrath on Oliver Goody, and there was no indication that it was going to quit any time in the near future.